Hello, my name's Ian Seeger from Pilot Career News. On the 6th and 7th of November, we held our very first virtual edition of Pilot Careers Live. We streamed over 30 different seminars with 60 speakers. There were 2 days packed full of great information. Of course, we recorded everything, and you're about to watch one of the videos from the event. Before you do, I just want to thank our sponsors, Bose, Alsim, Entro, and of course Poolies. Without them and without the exhibitors, it wouldn't be possible. The exhibitor pages are still live, so feel free to head on over there, go to www.pilotcareerslive.com and click through to the exhibitors. There's loads of information, loads of downloads, all sorts of great stuff there for you. Anyway, enjoy the video, and if you find it useful, really appreciate it if you click subscribe on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome back to this session, which is on ground school. So before we get going, I just wanted to run through a couple of housekeeping things. We've currently disabled the Q&A and chat. As you would have noticed, there was a few issues with that. We'll get that back up and running a bit later, hopefully for the Q&A session. There were also a whole bunch of questions that were being posed during the seminars and the talks, and we haven't really planned to have Q&A live during those in the comments, so they were planned for the Q&A sessions afterwards, which is what we're going to try and do. There were also a couple of questions and a bunch of general questions which weren't really aimed at any of the specific talks, so they're being collated, and I'll hopefully deal with as many of those as I possibly can in the wrap-up tonight, including some of the more contentious questions that were asked. So we'll hopefully nail those tonight for you. It's not that we're avoiding them, it's just that we need to fit it into the schedule and everything else. So before we get back onto this, I just wanted to also say a quick request. So don't forget, there's more to the site than just the live stream, although clearly you wouldn't want to miss talking to Ted Pinkney and Alex Whittingham. But after that, perhaps maybe go take a look at the exhibitors. There are plenty of people there you can live chat with, or you can video conference with if you have specific questions, and you can ask the same question to multiple exhibitors, clearly. And one last thing, I'd just like to thank the sponsors, without whom, in fact, without the exhibitors and sponsors, none of this would be possible. So that's Alsim, Entrol, Bose and Poolies, and if you're shopping at Poolies using the code PCL gets you 5% off. So thank you very much for that, and I think let's talk ground school. So Alex, perhaps you could start by just giving us a really basic overview of what ground school is for people who haven't really, but people at the very beginning of their journey.
Very beginning, okay. So but what it is it means training on the ground school. So at PPL level, when you first start flying, you'll get taught about meteorology, you'll be taught about the basic operation of the aeroplane, little bits about aviation law, navigation, that sort of thing. That would be PPL ground school. And if you take the modular route, once you've done your private pilot's license and decide to take a professional course, the very next thing that you do is your ATPL Theory. And this is the same thing, but longer, deeper and harder. There are 14 subjects involved, and the requirements from EASA are that we must spend, for modular, 650 hours, for integrated 750 hours teaching this material. So it's a comparatively long exercise, and most people will take between 6 months and a year and a half to work through the ATPL Theory, and it very much depends on your learning style. If you can take a lot of time out to study, then 6 months is very realistic, but you'd have to be going at it fairly hard. And for most people who take the modular route, who've got jobs and family life and things like that, it's a little bit more difficult to fit in around your normal lifestyle, and hence the longer sort of time involved.
Thank you very much, Ted. I wonder if we could ask you, first of all, this is the first time you've been on the panel today, so perhaps you could just start by giving us a little bit of an introduction as to who you are, where you come from, what your number is, that kind of thing.
Sure. So Ted Pinkney is my name. I have been with L3Harris for just over 3 years now as their head of ground school, or chief theoretical knowledge instructor, as EASA like to refer to us. Before that, I was at one of the other major ATOs within the UK in a similar role, but my actual flying career was conducted in the Royal Air Force, where I was a aviator for about 25 of my 31 years in the Air Force. A good proportion of that was in the instructing roles as well, so I've been teaching for quite some time now.
Fantastic, thanks. So Alex was coming at this from a modular point of view and spoke about modular ground school, but in terms of integrated ground school, does that differ very much? I mean, the exams are the same, aren't they?
They are, and Alex described it very well there. Actually, it's the ground school is the ground school for the ATPLs. The only difference is that if you haven't already got a private pilot's license and you want to start straight in your professional career, then you'll do the ground school right at the beginning of your training regime. So you'll be coming in cold, and the ATPL theory is designed for somebody who's got no background in aviation at all. So it teaches you everything, and some would say a lot more than you need to be a commercial pilot.
Roughly speaking, how long will people spend in a classroom on a daily basis?
Different schools have different ways of doing it, but it's generally 6 or 7 hours per day, 5 days a week for around about 6 months. Some schools manage to do it in 26 weeks, others take 32 weeks, but it's around about 6 months.
That's a fairly chunky piece of learning.
It is, and to be fair, for those on the integrated route, the ground school tends to be the area that catches more people out. Flying, I always joke that flying training is all about this. If you go like that and the cows get bigger, and then go like that and the cows get smaller, then that's your flying training complete. Not quite that simple, obviously, but the ground school is the most challenging part for many people. But it's also the area that a lot of airlines use to differentiate between potential employees, because if you've got a pass in your licensing skills test, then you've got a pass in your licensing skills test. But with the ground school, you can actually demonstrate a range of ability. If you've got a marginal pass, i.e. 75% across all your exams, then potentially you're not quite as good a prospect as somebody who's got an 85-90% pass rate across all of their exams. So the airlines do like to see good results in the ground school.
I would be happy with 75%. Alex, tell me, when you do it distance learning, you break it down into different modules?
Yes, indeed. And Ted may well do the same thing. In most EASA states, you don't have to take all your exams at the same time. So it makes sense to study for 4 exams, take a set of exams, study for the next 4 subjects, take another set of exams. It's less stress. There are some EASA states that require you to do absolutely everything and then take all the exams at once, but they are few and far between, thankfully.
That sounds like a fairly major chunk of work, really.
I think it would be quite difficult keeping all those subjects in your head at exam level.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Ted, I wonder if you can help us out a little bit with the timing. As I understand it, there are kind of 2 different calendars associated with the ground school.
Yeah, if you like. There are 2 regulations that you've got to comply with. The EASA states that all exams must be taken within 18 months from the end of the month in which you take your first exam. So, for example, if you took an exam today, the 6th of November, you'd have until 18 months from the end of this month to complete your last exam. If you haven't done your last exam within that timescale, then unfortunately you've got to start the whole thing again. But there's another limit as well. If you're aiming for an ATPL, you've got to do your licensing skills test within 36 months of you completing your last EASA exam. So there are 2 limits that you've got to adhere to actually get a license there.
So I guess from your first exam to your license could be, what, 54 months? Is that adding it up?
You push it to the limit, yeah, you could do.
Just presumably not a great idea. And in integrated terms, do you divide it into different modules in terms of sitting the exams?
We do. As Alex says, most countries will allow you, most states will allow you to sit and exams in batches, and we in our school break it down into 3 different modules. So we do 4 exams, then 5 exams. There are 1 or 2 schools that do it in 2, but the majority break it down into 3 or more modules.
Okay, hard question coming up for both of you. It's the 6th of November today. Things are going to change on the 31st of December. How does that affect people who are either A, halfway through their ground school, or B, those who haven't started yet? I don't know if do you want to take that, Alex, at the beginning?
I'll have a go at that. So you're talking about Brexit and the possibility of an EASA exit, I think, rather than the new syllabus being introduced at exactly the same time.
We'll come on to syllabus later.
So there is an EASA rule that says that you have to take all of your ground exams under the authority of one state, and this was never meant to be contentious. It's just simply a reflection of how the different countries pass information around between them, and they decided it was too difficult to pass individual exam pass certificates round, and there would just be one certificate at the end that said you've completed all of your theory exams. And that creates a problem because of Brexit. Because candidates who haven't finished will have to make some choices. Now, currently we have really two choices for UK candidates. It's whether you want to take your exams with the UK CAA or whether you want to take your exams with an EASA authority. And that's perfectly acceptable. We have EASA authorities that come and do testing in our country, and the chief of those is Austrocontrol. So for some time, candidates have been able to take Austrocontrol exams, which they intend to apply to an EASA license at some stage, and possibly also a UK license. Now, the question that was asked is what happens at the end of the year, and the difficulty there is that the UK CAA won't accept EASA exam passes beyond the end of the year, and EASA won't accept UK CAA passes beyond the end of the year. So somebody who's part completed is almost committed to continuing their exam sequence with the authority that they started with. I say almost because there are two get-outs. The first is if you had been doing your exams with the Austrian authority and you actually wanted a UK-issued license, the UK CAA have said that they can swap over, candidates can swap over. So if they've done 10 exams with the Austrians, they can complete the last 4 after Brexit transition period with the UK CAA, and that would then get them the issue of a UK CAA license. There is a similar path, but it's got less legitimacy if you want to take an EASA license, because the CAA, of course, are coming out of EASA, so they're not bound by EASA rules. But Austrocontrol are staying in EASA, so they have to abide by the rules. Or so you'd think. In fact, the Austrians are quite forward in pushing the boundaries of what is reasonable, and they have said that they will allow candidates who've done part of their exams with the UK to swap over to Austria and do exactly the same thing, complete their sequence there. I say it has less legitimacy because the EASA rules actually prevent this, but whether it will actually make any difference at the end of the day, whether they'll prevent you getting a license issued, is a very moot point. I think it's very unlikely that they would. But it is slightly illegal, whereas coming the other way, the CAA after January will have their own authority to set whatever rules they like.
Thank you. That seems like it's one for watching back on the video to try and get
that was a long answer, I'm sorry, but you knew it was going to be a complicated question when you asked it.
It's a long and complicated answer. Ted, let's see if we can simplify that a little bit. If you've got some people at the moment who are halfway through of your students, are they going to continue with the same authority afterwards?
Well, we made sure that we got people to state which license they wanted right from the outset. So people have signed on to either a UK CAA license path or an EASA license path, and we've got positions in place to ensure that it doesn't muddy the waters for them as they go through. Most of your listeners today, of course, will not have already started, and therefore, by the time they get to take exams, they will have already made that decision. But as Alex quite rightly said earlier, they need to make a decision before they start as to whether or not they're aiming for a UK CAA license or an EASA license, and that will obviously depend on where they come from, what passport they hold, and where they intend to work.
Okay, so just a basic question here. How many questions in each paper? Does it vary?
It does. It depends on the question paper. I should have downloaded the numbers before we came on. But for example, in a comms paper in the present syllabus, you can expect around about 24 to 30 questions, whereas in a Gen Nav paper you can expect, or a meteorology paper, you can expect about 85 questions. And the exam lengths differ as well. Under the present syllabus, the comms exams are 30 minutes, whereas the Gen Nav exam is 2 hours. So it's based on the amount of subject matter knowledge that you need to take on before you take the exams.
I guess where I'm leading from that is those questions are drawn from a question bank, and does every state draw from the same question bank?
Presently, yes. At the moment, they're using what's referred to as ECQB 6, Question Bank 06. But for the new syllabus, which is now available, they're using Question Bank ECQB 20. But all states use the same question bank for their exams.
So two questions from that then. If you began your study under ECQB Banana, can you continue your study under ECQB Apple?
No, EASA has stated that there's no transfer. Well, the UKCA have stated that there's no transfer from one syllabus to another. So if you've started on ECQB 6, you can complete, and the CAA have allowed exams up to the end of 2022 to allow you to complete on the old syllabus.
Okay, and final question for you, Ted, not final question, but on this subject, before I hand over to Alex, who's wagging his finger at the moment. So, assuming no agreement's reached, on January the 1st, will we have a UK question bank of our own?
We will. Some people will be surprised at how similar it is to ECQB 6.
Okay. Thank you. Alex, I'll leave people to read between those lines there for a second.
There are two questions there. The similarity of the question bank is an interesting one, because I've been asking the CAA for some years how they think they're going to generate a question bank for the exams if the UK actually leaves EASA, and I haven't had much of a response. Generally, we can tell if contractors are being used to write questions, because it's a small industry and we know when there's no sign of contractors being asked to write questions. And I'd be surprised if the CAA use the EASA question bank. I think EASA might have something to say with that, unless they've come to an agreement, which I don't know anything about. The other question that you asked was the business of transferring from the current syllabus to the 2020 syllabus, and Ted quite rightly said that the UK CAA won't allow that. So that means that as ATOs we have to actually teach both of the syllabi in parallel to two different groups of students for quite a long time until this ambiguity expires. But luckily, the Austrians have said that if you want to, you can swap over. They say there's no barrier to it at all. So people who've started on the old syllabus complete a module of exams, and then they can start the second module or the third module, whichever, under the new syllabus. And personally, I think that might be an advantage, because the new syllabus looks to me to be an improvement on the old one.
Just a small technical point on that. If you have to stick to the syllabus you started with, that presumably means the CAA will have to run two series of exams, exam for Apple syllabus and exam for Banana syllabus.
Indeed it does, and that means the answer to your earlier question, which is how are they going to get a question bank? The question should actually have been, how are they going to get two question banks? Because as exactly as you say, they're going to have to run the exams in parallel for some time, January 22 in fact. Or actually, no, they've said later. The UK CAA have said, I can't remember, I think it's August 22, they're going to finally stop the old exams.
So I guess the problem is, we've spoken about it for about 10-15 minutes, and it's a hugely complex area. And someone who's embarking on their path towards becoming a commercial pilot and starting off with their ATPL exams, whether they're doing it integrated or modular, probably don't need or want this level of complexity. It's like, you want me to take some exams? Tell me the syllabus. Let me get on with it. Do you manage to shield your students from the complexity, Ted?
We do. I mean, we basically ask a very simple question: which license do you aspire towards, a UK CAA or an EASA? And based on their answer to that question, that's the course we'll load them onto. And up until now, we've always aligned people with the old syllabus, with effect from, actually, we've got a course starting on Monday, and that'll be the first course that we're going to run on the new syllabus. And with effect from Monday onwards, all new signees will be on the new syllabus if they come to L3 Harris.
How often does the syllabus change?
This is the first, Alex may correct me here, but but I think this is the first syllabus change since 2012. I think it was 12. It could have been 14. So not that
16.
regularly.
16.
26.
The question would be better asked by saying, how often does this?
That's my job.
How often does the syllabus change significantly? Because it's changed in small ways over the years, and this is touted as a significant change. In fact, having looked at it, I don't think it is actually going to be that significant. A number of subjects are almost untouched, and in other subjects the differences are not vast. And they're very much modelling it on the questions that they're asking in the exams now are going to be very similar to the questions that are going to be asked in the new syllabus exams, with some additions.
That brings me to where I was really going with that before your clarification. Thank you very much, and your point of pedantry. No, it wasn't pedantry at all. During the ground school, there are certain brush-up sessions that happen before the exams, and much of that brush-up session, as I understand it, is based around people's knowledge of the questions that get asked. A new question bank will bring new questions potentially. So does it take a while for that to bed in, for people to understand it? Is there? I guess what I'm saying is, if you have someone who's equally talented, and they would have got 98% under ECQB banana and ECQB apples come in, will that same person get the same percentage, or will they not benefit from the?
Well, very off-the-wall questions that didn't really bear much relationship to the syllabus that EASA had written. Modern questions are much closer to the syllabus. So what we're anticipating is that the 2020 questions, the new ones that come in, will be fundamentally straight out of the syllabus. So if the learning objective says state that apples are bananas, then there'll be a question saying apples are A, bananas, B, carrots, C, really straightforward stuff. Nowadays the revision courses, we call them revision courses still, but they're more to do with teaching so that people have a good understanding of the material rather than focusing them on specific questions. Ted's probably very similar.
Would you support that roughly, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I've got to say that your good standard cadet that you were referring to earlier, if he's got the knowledge base, then he should score as well in any question bank. In practice, as Alex alluded to, some of the questions are worded in such a way that you really do need to be aware of what it is that the EASA are looking for when they ask the question. But again, Alex is quite right in that an awful lot of the ambiguous questions have now been weeded out. And so I'm reasonably confident that the new question bank will be pragmatic and logical and only ask what it should be asking.
Okay, great, and thank you. We've just got a couple of minutes left, so I want to bring it back to the basics. So I guess if there's someone out there sitting there watching this thinking, you know what, this is going to be for me, but I'm going to do my ATPL ground school. Obviously, they're going to do it early in the process anyway, but they're still a few months away, maybe even a year away. What can they and what should they do to prepare? How's the best way to give yourself the best chance for a ground school?
Revise your high school maths and physics first of all. Don't try and come in having not looked at a maths or physics book for a long time, because it would ease your process through some of the more technical subjects. I'm not talking about degree level. I'm only talking about if you did your schooling in the UK, then GCSE sort of level. But you do need to be able to do maths and physics to a lower degree. A bit of mental maths as well. We find that I ask cadets question, okay, you're using 2,000 kilos per hour. How many kilos would you use in a quarter of an hour? And they reach for the calculator. They need to be able to do that sort of maths in their head. Mental arithmetic is quite important. A basic dictionary on aviation terms would be helpful, because if you know what a wing is before you come, then we don't need to teach you what a wing is. But a little bit more in depth there, if you know what an aileron is, then we don't need to teach you what an aileron is. So just general background about aviation would be useful. Some people do say that a little bit of flying experience is good. I tend to hear from my flight instructors that actually they prefer to have people who a blank canvas to teach flying to. But my personal opinion is that it's a bit crazy to embark on a employment like this if you haven't even sat in an aeroplane. So make sure you've got a few hours behind you before you start. But that's it really. Other than that, the school, the ATO, be it ours or BGS or any of the other good ATOs out there, they will teach you everything you need to know.
Alex, any top tips for future students, what they should be spending their time doing now?
Well, modular is different, of course, because when candidates come to us, they've already done a PPL, they've done the PPL exams, and they do the ground training, the theory, whilst they're flying. So it's much, much more relevant. But what Ted said, certainly, bit of mental maths, go over your PPL books, get out there on Microsoft Flight Sim, get out there in a real aeroplane, and just be a sort of a potential aviation professional.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, both of you. I hope you'll join us at our Q&A session later.
I hope so.
We'll wrap this one up. Thank you very much.